Hi everybody, Beth here from Access Paranormal for this week's I Want to Know, which is all about stirring up possible paranormal activity after a paranormal investigation. So of course, as normal, I'd love to hear your experiences, whether or not this has happened to you or you know of other teams or investigators that this has actually happened to. Use the comment section below and let me know what your experiences have happened. Like, has it increased in certain phenomena? Has it decreased in certain phenomena? Would love to know your stories and your experiences as well. Now, of course, as usual, I would look at this particular question. Thank you to the person who has sent this in, by the way. I have eventually gotten around to it. With a particular question like this, you've got to look at both sides of the different styles of investigating, or the core styles, which is all investigation types. Your public, your historical locations, and your private, which is all your residential as well. So we'll look at it from two different angles as well, because I think they're very, very different. Obviously different reasons for investigating, so I think different ways in which to handle it if there is possible paranormal activity that does increase when somebody is actually when somebody does actually say that there's actually been an increase in activity there as well. So of course, with public investigations, it's a very different ball game. It's a type of investigation where, so if you've hired a venue out and that particular venue has told you about the activity beforehand, and you've gone there as a team and you've hired it out and you've investigated, and then you to find out later from the owners or the people who run the events there that there's actually been an increase in activity, then you can say, all right, well, that could be, but again, it depends how often those tours and events are run. Some locations here in Australia run them once a month. Some places may run them, once a week. It's often once a week. Some, if they're really, really popular, will run them once an evening or during the whole entire week, and they're the really, really popular locations. So it depends as well with that. Again, there could be other factors. It is paranormal phenomena. It is spontaneous, so there could be another reason why there could be a possible increase in activity. But just keep that in mind, that it depends how frequently, obviously, tours are run, but also how many people are in their location too. So, say for instance, it is a place that opens its doors once a month, and they say, oh, there's been an activity increase in the time I open the doors a month later. Well, obviously, you can probably turn around and think, from what we know, of possible paranormal phenomena, there's probably a good chance it may not actually have been you. Hi everybody, hi Renata. So there's that as well. Also, we sometimes as investigators will use ways to elicit communication, or try and do that when we have a bit more free reign when it comes to investigating in a public location. Now, if it's a tour group as well, you've got everything laid out for you. You've got all the information there, you've got the experiences there, so you can go in there and you know what you're dealing with, and they also know the venue really well too, so they'll actually be able to say, hey, actually that's a really interesting increase in activity since your group came in and investigated that particular location. Hey guys, what did you do? So sometimes that can be that as well. So yes, reenactments, we've got, there can also be also known as error cues. So, with investigating, as most of us know, it's a fun game in some regards if it comes to a public location, because you can be sitting there for very long periods of time, and even the most dedicated of us can actually drift off to sleep or start playing noddy and start nodding off. Error cues or seeing recreations are really, really good, just from the pure activity and fun side of it. If you really want to get into it, some people even dress up, music, you name it, all that kind of stuff. So it depends how far you want to go with it. So some people may use that as a way to elicit some sort of communication. It is an idea in the field that by doing that can help, recreate or stir something that had been living in there, or somebody's emotions of something left behind that was there. That's the thought with that as well. And also I also find it fun too, just from a sound perspective as well, because I've been really getting into that of late. Now, of course, there are private cases, which is a whole other ball game when it comes to the possibility of increasing possible paranormal activity if you've actually gone into that location. Now, technically, you don't really want that to be an achievement. Public locations, you probably would. It'd be interesting, because then whatever methods you're using might be something that has caused more activity, which is, as investigators at the moment, it's a good thing, because we get to learn from it. It's probably not something you want to do in a private case. You're more there to find out what's going on, as opposed to going, hey, yo, come hang with me, what's up? So there's a very, very, very different intention, very, very different ball game type going on there. But I have been involved in cases where we've gone and we've done an investigation, the first one out of many, and literally within 24 hours after that, the activity has increased. And often you're relying obviously on what the client is telling you. They've obviously, fingers crossed, they have a diary, they've got information that they're actually recording for you leading up to that investigation, so you've got a bit of an idea of the times, what type of phenomenon might be actually still happening. So you've got a bit of obviously a game plan of where to put equipment, all sorts of stuff. We all know what goes on with that. But then, of course, afterwards, if you have investigated and it has increased, and as I said, like that has happened to me on a few occasions, it's often the first investigation I find it. After that, if we go again, doesn't often happen if at all, but it's often the first investigation that I have found that's happened for me, where the client will say, look, things were just going off, and what have you done, basically? And literally it is just us going in there and observing the environment. It's actually not even asking out. I don't often, as an investigator myself, really ask out too much. The most, maybe a really short audio recording session, or they call it, an EVP session in our language, in our jargon as well. So I tend to really scale back on the whole asking out and trying to elicit anything, and I highly recommend that for anyone else as well, because again, like as we know, we're there to find out what's going on, but then once we leave, these beautiful people have to stay in that home. And as much as some of us would love to live in a haunted house, trust me, when you're dealing with calls and emails from people that are petrified in their own home, it ain't as fun as it seems. So that's also something to keep in mind as well. Can it actually happen? It depends. In my experience, I have noticed a difference, but it's only on in cases, certain paranormal private cases as well. Now, there has been a question as well with regards to stirring up activity, and it's often ones I have with private cases where people will ask me, look, I'm interested in the paranormal. That's why I started to realize what was going on. And of course, there could be two sides to this. Either they've ascertained whether or not anything that's happening in their home is paranormal when it's not, because these shows have influenced them, or it's actually opened up their mind to maybe something that is going on, and they've actually realized that there is a pattern that they're seeing on TV as well. So you've got to be 50-50, be as open-minded as you can, but often at the same time, that people will ask, by watching a paranormal TV program, does that elicit some sort of communication or activity, or increase it in the house? Now, one may laugh at that, but when I first started investigating 10 years ago, I was a little worried myself, because I was living in a flat share in London, and it wasn't just me there. So obviously I'd come home at all hours of the night, and they're all party, and I've come home from trying to talk to the dead. And, I was also very conscious about, making sure that, people at home felt safe as well. So the only spirits in that house were vodka. I found out later, nothing wrong with that. But it was, at the same time, it's the whole point of actually, watching and being involved in those TV shows, the chances of anything happening, or any activity or any elicitation of anything possibly spirit going on, or bringing something forward, very, very, very unlikely. Ghosts technically don't exist, but that aside, the fact that it's more than likely you're heightening your own sense of fear in your home is probably the only thing that's actually happening, as opposed to actually anything possibly going on, or you actually creating an environment with that. So it's, again, sometimes, like people will say with Ouija boards, the pros, the cons, whatever, however you sit with it. Some people say just the thought of using one is enough to scare somebody into something possibly happening. So it really is, this beautiful grey matter on the top of our head has a lot to answer for. So that's something else to keep in mind. I often get that question myself. So if anyone was to ask you, see how you go. But that's my general thoughts on that particular one. But like I said, my experience, some people say that renovations can be something that can stir activity. Now, you're obviously not going to be renovating when you're investigating for the very first time in someone's private home, unless you are a paranormal renovator as well. So that's one way to be able to earn a living while investigating. But clearly, obviously, that's not the case. Jokes aside, there has been a couple of ideas whether or not stirring activity in a particular location can be from people doing renovations. Again, my opinion on that from my own experience has been the opposite. I have found that when people have renovated their homes, like when I've investigated beforehand myself and then actually gone in afterwards, there's actually been very, very little at all. It's like walking in, it's almost like the soul's been taken out of it a little bit. So it's been very interesting. So from my experience, it's actually been the opposite, but I know there have been other people that have, you know, moved into a place, everything's fine, and they're like, great, we've got a budget, we can do some renovations. They start renovating and things start to happen as well. But of course, that's not when you're doing paranormal investigating. But that's just a general thing from an idea about anything being stirred up from an energy perspective. Hi, Cara. Hi, Julie. So there's a couple of things to think about there as well. Like I said, use the comment section below. I'll be checking back as well over the days too, which I always do, and I love getting these great comments and these beautiful people who comment every week. Thank you so much. I love hearing your thoughts and ideas, and as I said, we all learn from each other as well. So in general, when it comes to paranormal investigating, can you actually stir up activity? It will depend how you're getting your information about the type of activity before you've investigated. So are the people that telling you the information about what was happening before you investigated, are they reliable? Is the information reliable? Have they got a good sense of debunking, if I could say the word? You know, do they know how things, how sounds and things can look paranormal when they're not? Because that can, you know, we can attribute a paranormal team going into a location and stirring up activity, and it could have absolutely nothing to do with that paranormal team at all. It could just be the spontaneous nature of paranormal phenomena, and that's what it's like. It's like trying to nail slime to the wall, really. And when it comes to investigating the paranormal, there could be so many different ways, and we don't know what it is yet, but we can explore at least different ideas on how all this fabulous stuff works. So hopefully that can help you guys out a little bit. Thank you so much for joining. Again, use the comment section. Love to know your experiences, and I'll see you next week.